Resident Evil is a staple in video game culture. The first in the series pioneered the survival horror genre and is just a good game in general. The series has been around long enough for it to lose its way with action-packed releases, but recently has come back stronger than ever, returning to form with more horror-driven titles. Popular entries in the series have started to get the remake treatment as well, extending to my favorite entry in the entire saga. Resident Evil 4 was initially released on January 11, 2005 and has captivated gamers ever since. Not me, though, because in 2005 I was still far too young in my mother's eyes to play such a violent game. My tiny prepubescent mind couldn't handle the sheer unfiltered big dick energy Resident Evil 4 had to offer. Well, I'm older now, and I've played through the game plenty of times, so I'm accustomed to that energy, and I'm ready to review this masterpiece.
I was wondering if you might recognize the girl in this photograph?
¿Qué carajo estás haciendo aquí? ¡Lárgate, cabrón!
Sorry to have bothered you.
Resident Evil 4 opens with a quick recap of the last game's events. The world has been a crazy place ever since the zombie outbreak in Raccoon City, and the protagonist of the second game, Leon Kennedy, is now working directly with the United States government. 6 years after the Raccoon City outbreak, he's been sent to an undisclosed Eastern European country to find the president's daughter, Ashley. She's been kidnapped, and it's up to Leon to return her home safely. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. The story is ridiculous. All the previous games were goofy as well, but 4 is where the sharks started to be jumped narratively. I would describe it as a B-movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. Leon's snapping off one-liners like he's Schwarzenegger in the 80s, and I'm here for it.
Hasta luego. Bit of advice, try using knives next time. Works better for close encounters.
No, you stay here with Leon. He is better with the ladies.
Sure, much of the narrative doesn't make any sense, and the characters are pulled right from a fever dream, but I don't care. There's so much personality in the plot of these games, and it almost feels like watching your favorite Saturday morning cartoon, except gorier. Much, much gorier. I could sit here and point out all the logical fallacies in this story and how players will only understand a hefty portion of the plot if they play spin-off games, but why would I do that? If Sigma male Leon Kennedy has taught me anything, it's don't question a good thing. More importantly, he taught me to turn down presidential strange when it's offered to me.
So, after you take me back to my place, how about we do some, overtime?
No thanks, bro.
Resident Evil 4 may not be written well, but it's perfect in my eyes. Sometimes it's so bad we loop all the way around to good. That's just the story, though. How's the gameplay held up over the years?
Oh, I needed her to buy Sadler's trust in me. Like you, I'm American.
Previous Resident Evils had tank controls along with fixed camera angles to create tension. Due to Resident Evil 4 being more action-oriented, fixed camera angles would have been remarkably impractical, so Capcom scrapped them for an over-the-shoulder third-person perspective, which would become the new standard for survival horror games for many years to come. Despite the fixed camera angles being gone, players can still expect tank controls. Leon must stop dead to take a shot or use his knife, and aiming is done with the red laser that comes off the end of your gun. These controls haven't stood the test of time for many gamers, and I often see newer players gravitating to the modern Resident Evil control scheme seen in the remakes of 2 and 3, where the players are allowed to aim while moving. I understand the frustration with the static aiming seen in 4, but I feel that it benefits the overall experience. Not being allowed to move when aiming creates tension. The developers were sure to design the common enemies and the bosses around us. There are a large variety of enemies in the game that have different attack animations and movements, but none of them feel overpowered or cheap. I encourage the player to utilize other attributes besides movement. Every time I play through this, I notice my aiming getting better, to the point I shoot every thrown object out of the sky and blow off every kneecap in sight, which of course allows me to get some good ammo-saving stabbing action.
But kill a man with a sock? It ain't so hard.
I'm not going to sit here and say the controls are perfect, because they show their age for sure. Leon looks awkward when moving because his animations are so rigid, which translates to the aiming sometimes. However, overall I still think it's appropriate with the gameplay loop. That being said, shooting won't be the only thing players will have to worry about. I mentioned in this video's story section that Leon's primary goal is saving the president's daughter, Ashley. This means she's going to pal around with you for some sections of the game, and will need protection. This mechanic is another aspect that gets panned by gamers, and I have to say this because they're
So weak.
I don't pan other people's opinions often when making these videos, but this is something that's always bothered me. First off, Ashley is kidnapped for a large portion of the game, so you don't even have to worry about her most of the time. Secondly, the game allows you to tell her where to go, so if she's in a bad spot and dies, you don't really have anyone to blame but yourself.
You're garbage.
Now, does this mean Ashley isn't annoying? Of course not. She's annoying as fuck. Still, it's not because of her AI. It's because of her abrasive personality and voice. Okay, rant over. What else is there to do in this game? There's a decent amount of variety available with a gun range players can participate in for rewards, along with puzzle sections and alternative gameplay sections like assuming control of Ashley for a more running than gunning experience. Plus, what other game can you buy and upgrade weapons from a sex offender?
Got something that might interest you.
Take those weapons and store them in the immensely satisfying inventory system. Basically, the developers took the best parts of Tetris and turned them into a mechanic for a horror game. It's a great addition, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the QuickTime events are also done well here. The QuickTime events are here to keep you focused during the cutscenes. The tension must never leave, even when you think you're safe, and I like that shit.
It's nice.
Every playthrough someone has of this title will lead them to get more and more exploitative of the AI. It's the natural progression of Resident Evil 4. I've seen people do full runs of the game with little to no ammo being used, so it's good that the game has a professional difficulty to keep things challenging after multiple playthroughs. If all of this wasn't enough, the game also has extra modes, with Separate Ways, Assignment Ada, and Mercenaries. Separate Ways has players assuming control of Ada Wong and allows you to see an alternate perspective to the main story you just played. It's akin to what was seen in Resident Evil 2 with Claire and Leon, but on a smaller scale. The main campaign clocks in over 12 hours for the average player, while Ada's campaign can be completed in less than 5. If you still want more playtime as Ada Wong, you can also play the mode that's named after her. Assignment Ada is a one-mission run in the last section of the main story. The mode feels more like a challenge mission than a full-blown level, but more content is always appreciated. The iconic Mercenary mode being a prime example. Mercenaries is a time-challenged horde mode. Players will pick between characters with different loadouts and a variety of benefits depending on the level they play on. This mode is entertaining, and it's easy to sink hours upon hours chasing high scores. Resident Evil 4 is basically flawless in my eyes regarding the gameplay, but how is the presentation aged? Two 2005 was a long time ago. Back then, people thought low-rise scenes looked great, so who can blame Resident Evil 4 for looking a bit bland? This is obviously due to the game being almost 20 years old, but it's worth mentioning. Environment textures are a bit bland, and the muted color palette chosen for this game isn't doing it any favors. Luckily, the developers show real attention to detail with the character models, facial animations, and the environmental effects. I mean, for fuck's sake, you can see the steam coming off this dude's piss.
It's freezing.
The game has also been released on almost every console you can think of and has gotten the HD remaster treatment. This allows the game to be much more consumable for first-time players. Something odd, though, is not every cutscene has been upscaled to HD.
Why?
It's weird to me that developers would take the time to upscale everything except for a few cutscenes. It's hard not to look at this as anything except laziness, but I'm nitpicking. The game's audio is still fantastic, and the opening music. Oh, that beautiful opening music. I love the atmosphere in Resident Evil 4. It never forgets its goofy foundation, and that's what makes it memorable. This game is a classic to many, including myself, and after replaying it again, I would put it in my top 5 games of all time. I really do love it that much, and I wish I would have played it on release day. I ended up playing it when the HD re-release came out for Xbox 360, and I've been in love ever since. This leads me to why I decided to make this video. Seeing the announcement for the remake of Resident Evil 4 initially garnered this reaction from me. This was because I felt the original game was perfect for what it is, and I thought the remake would take away from that somehow. I have since concluded this is an immature mindset. The original will still be available, and if I want to play the OG version with upgraded visuals, a beautiful fan-made mod allows me to do so. I'm happy to say I'm excited about the remake now, and I hope it's excellent. I also hope newcomers are inspired to play the original because of the remake. More attention on Resident Evil 4 is never a bad thing in my eyes, and that's where I'm going to close this one out. Play this game if you haven't. And if you're apprehensive about the remake coming out, relax. We'll always have the original to look back on fondly.